Dennis Skinner, a lot of people around Great Britain call you the Beast of Bolsover. What does that mean?
Well, my constituency is Bolsover. It's an ex-mining community in Derbyshire. I used to be a miner myself, and I was attacking the Prime Minister of the day at the time, and one of his backbench colleagues referred to me and said to the Speaker, "Why don't you stop this bloody Beast of Bolsover?" And it's stuck ever since.
Does it bother you when somebody calls you the Beast of Bolsover?
No, there's a little ditty in Britain that we were brought up to remember as a kid: sticks and stones will break my bones, but calling never hurts me, so I don't worry.
If you were Prime Minister of Great Britain, how would you change things?
Well, first of all, we've got to get back to full employment. One of the chronic illnesses within the West generally is unemployment, and I believe that if you want more taxpayers, if you want to raise more tax and get more revenue, then you've got to get people into work. It also undermines the social fabric of any country. There's plenty of evidence for that. So my main task would be, it'd be on the agenda every single day, to get Britain back to work, to get people fully employed, to get those kids that are on the street corners without hope and without a job, get them a chance to start work. And it wouldn't be the same work when I was a young man working in the pits. We was never find 700,000 mining jobs ever again, or the same equivalent number in the steel industry. But when you think of the ageing population, you could employ a lot more people in the welfare services and the National Health Service.
How long have you been a member?
I've been a member for 23 years.
What did you do right before that?
I used to work underground, about half a mile under the soil, as a miner, and I did that for 21 years. I never thought that I'd ever become a member of Parliament. I used to represent the miners locally at that time on social security matters and various other things. And although I was a lay official, I used to have to work down the pit every single day.
How did you get into politics?
I got into politics because I was born with... we had politics for breakfast, dinner and tea in our household. We were a family of 10. My father had been out of work and victimised before the Second World War. And so we understood the economics of Britain, when other kids could have things and toys, and we couldn't have any because my father had been victimised. We understood all that. That's how you learn your economics. I don't believe that politics starts at Westminster or in the Congress of America. It begins in your environment. And the environment shaped me.
Of those 10 kids that you grew up with, how many of them are still alive?
They're all there. Oh, yeah, and all involved in politics at some level or other.
Where are you in that 10?
I was the eldest boy, 2 sisters above me.
And involved in politics, in what part of Great Britain?
Well, 2 of my brothers were actually involved in one of the greatest rent strikes that's ever been known in Britain, the Claycross Rent Rebellion, when they refused the government diktat of putting up rents by £1 a week in Claycross, and the rest of Britain succumbed. And my brothers and the colleagues on the council said, "Get stuffed," and they stuck it out for a year. They were barred from public life for 14 years for doing it. Well, that's all in public life for 14 years for doing it. Well, that's all in the past now, and it never stopped them from carrying out their political and socialist views.
Can you remember the first time you got a touch of politics and said, "I want to be a member"?
Oh, yeah, I remember quite clearly. My father took me up to a union meeting on the fairground, and there was this fella there talking about, during the war, talking about, we want more cheese and meat for miners, because we're on rations then. And we used to have to get the ration books, and they said that miners, they needed the coal, the country needed the coal, so they said that we need more meat and beef for miners, and he wanted to get elected. That was the thing, and I realised from then on that this fellow was probably going to get elected, and he did, for the union, you see. And I saw this great crowd of miners listening to his every word. My father came away and he says, "Yes, he's got all the ingredients of how to make a speech, make them laugh and make them cry."
And when did you first get into it?
Well, I got involved in the trade union, and I became a trade union delegate for our pit, the 800 miners at our colliery, and I used to speak on their behalf. And yeah, just practiced and practiced. And then I stood for the local authority and practiced again on the street corners, as well as the pit canteen. And it's like every other thing. You've got to work at it. It can be a natural, but you still have to work at it.
When did you learn that you could say things that would get people's attention, or, you know, out of the ordinary thing?
Well, I learned from the beginning from my father that you've got to be explicit. It's no use being ambiguous. Say what you mean, you know, and also don't be a hypocrite. Don't tell people to do something you're not capable of doing yourself. You'd never get away with that in a coal mine. If you told miners to go on strike and you weren't taking part in it. So you have to practice what you preach. And always remember that actions are much more important than words. You can talk a donkey's hind leg off, but at the end of the day, it's what you do in life, not what you say.
How do you get so much attention on the floor of the House of Commons?
Well, I think it's partly because the Labour Party leadership want to have it both ways. They're frightened, they're unadventurous, they're lacking imagination, they don't see a political vacuum opening up when there is one. They've been trying to move to the middle and the centre of British politics, and they've failed. They've lost 4 elections in a row because they've tried to be yuppies and tried to appear to be Thatcher with a kind face. That's no good in politics. You need a direct confrontation so that when people go to the poll, they say, yeah, I can see the difference. Some people will say, well, we don't like the difference. Well, you've got to pose the difference. And sadly, the British Labour Party establishment ain't been doing that for about 15 years.
No, but how do you get attention from the Speaker?
Well, mainly because I say things as I see them.
But how do you? But she's got to recognize you.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, you have to stand up, you have to jump up and down, and all that work in the pits, in those 3-foot coal seams when I was on my hands and knees, give me a lot of practice so I can jump up and down and try to get recognised by the Speaker. And also, I turn up every day. You're not going to get called in the House of Commons if you're swanning around on some junket between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. You've got to be there. You've got to have it. Give yourself a chance every single day. So I'm not involved in this moonlighting as a member of Parliament. Lots of MPs have other jobs. I don't take part in that.
Are you there every day?
Every single day. I've not missed a day since I had an accident on my cycle since 1980.
How far is your constituency from London?
About 150 miles.
How often do you go home?
Every weekend.
How do you get there?
Usually by train, but sometimes by car, etc.
And when you go home, do you speak on the weekends?
Oh, yeah. I have to deal with constituency problems, because they call them surgeries in Britain, and then I go out to meetings. I do meetings all over Britain as well, for other constituencies, other Labour parties. And if there's a struggle involved in any industry where there might be a strike, then I'm usually called upon to go and address them as well.
How much money does a member make? How much money does a member make?
£30,000 a year, and compared to what I used to get as a coal miner, that's good money. I don't complain about the money. I think we're well paid.
I've read articles that say that you don't go to social events, like, and you don't believe in.
Well, the House of Commons is a place to legislate, quite frankly. And when I used to go to work at the coal mine, if I'd have gone there, having called in a pub on the way, a pub, you know, I had a drink, I would get turned back. They say, you're not going down the pit, you stink of ale. And if you did it twice, you'd get the sack. And so when I came to Parliament, I was determined I wasn't going to go in the 15 or 16 bars that there are around the place. You see, the House of Commons is not just a place where they legislate, it's a gentleman's club as well. And I made a decision 23 years ago. I wasn't going to get immersed in that gentleman's club where they argue one against the other, the Tory versus Labour or the Liberal, and then when it's all over, they go and have a drink together. I'm not in that game. Life is not about sloppy consensus.
What do you do when you have time off?
I've always been a bit of an athlete of one kind or another throughout all my life. Running, walking, cycling, tennis, football, cricket. I played them all. I suppose if I'd have been in America, I'd have baseball. That would have been my thing, I think.
Yeah.
Swinging that bat. Or maybe a pitcher. I used to bowl at cricket.
Do you have a family?
Yeah, but they've all left now. They all, luckily, because I had a bit of money, unlike when I was a miner, and they were able to go to university, and they've done pretty well for themselves.
How many kids?
3.
Do you get any sense that the people, or do you get any contact with the people in the United States that they watch you on the floor of the House of Commons?
Yeah. I have letters from America saying, you know, we watch you and we're thinking, you know, you put the position well or so on directly. And you have to confront things directly. I mean, quite frankly, I believe that the £26 billion that was given to the richest 1% in Britain in the Thatcher budgets should be clawed back by a future Labour government. I just wish our leadership would say that. So when I say it, then obviously you get a response of one kind or another. And when I say that this government is racist, that gets a response from some parts of America. And so on. I actually got to one fella sent a $100 bill to the Speaker of the House of Commons, the last one, Wetherell. And he sent for me one day and he said, I'd like to speak to you privately, Dennis. And you know the Speaker invites people for dinner and tea. And I refuse to become part of the club, so I've never been. And he said, I'd love you to come. I've got a personal thing to talk about. And I said, what is it? Tell me. So he finally told me. He said, well, I've got this $100 check, he says, from a well-wisher in America, and he wants me to send it to your favourite charity. I said, oh, I can tell you that now. Send it to the sacked miners. There'd been an industrial conflict in Britain in '84 and '5. Send it to those sacked miners so it can help them. Oh, he said, I think you better send it yourself.
Now, why wouldn't he send it?
He was a Tory at heart, and the Tories had fought the miners bitterly during that year-long strike. And so at the end, the Speaker's impartiality just showed to be slipping a little bit.
Now, if people send you money, can you keep it?
I wouldn't. I mean, I've always taken the view that I'm well paid. I've landed on my feet compared to the job I did as a miner. So why should I complain? And if I get an extra bob or two, I send it to any of the people that are engaged in an industrial battle that need the money.
One of the things that comes up in the Tories have been in power for 14 years.
Yep.
How come?
Partly as a result of the fact that the Labour Party lost its way during the period when it was last in office, 74 to 79. It started cutting welfare expenditure. So the election took place and the British electorate said, well, Mrs Thatcher's got a bigger knife than the Labour Party. The Labour Party says they're going to cut in order to resolve the country's problems. We might as well vote for the one that's got the biggest knife. And they voted for Thatcher. The Labour Party has hesitated, been unsure of itself, have not tackled the Tories on their philosophical ground. They've sort of argued the case that we're better than the Tories, but not much different. And so they've lost the election because the people want to see a contrast. And I'm hoping that in the next election that the Labour Party is going to get its act together and it's got a great chance of winning. The Tories have only got a majority of 17 now.
What do you think of John Smith, the leader?
He's better than Kinnock in the sense that he's got more credibility. He comes from the right wing of the Labour Party, which is not mine. But at least that's where he's always been. Mr Kinnock came from the left wing and then masqueraded as a right winger. And the Tories have always been able to say, will the real Mr Kinnock please stand up? He's got no credibility. So from that point of view, John Smith's on the right wing, but he's always been there.
There's an interesting article I was reading about you in the Sunday Telegraph, a conservative newspaper.
Yeah, a real conservative paper, yeah.
And the lady who wrote the piece said, he is one of the most admirable people ever to have gone into politics. That comes from the conservative paper?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's perhaps because they see me as standing up for what I believe in. I represent my class. That's what I went to Parliament for. And I'm not for sale. I mean, I don't believe there is such a thing as a free lunch. I've never taken anything from anybody in politics, any lobbying organisation, and they know when they see me, they know I mean it, and I vote according to what I say.
Is it true, the author here writes about a spoof in Who's Who, where you referred to yourself as good working class stock?
Yes, that's what I am. I mean, they sent me this letter before the election in 1970, and they said, on the presumption that you're going to win, Mr Skinner, because you've got a large majority, would you fill in this form for Who's Who? And so, and one of them was, it said something like breeding. I mean, ask you. So I said, good working class mining stock. And then when they said, which clubs do you belong to? I said, 73 Derbyshire Miners Welfares. Normally they put the posh clubs in London. in that category. No, I mean, I just want people to know where I'm coming from. I don't...
She also writes that you called, I assume, Dr. Owen, I assume that's Lord Owen.
Yeah, I called him a pompous sod, and the Speaker said, you better withdraw that. And I said, go on, then I'll withdraw the word pompous. He says, that's not the word I'm looking for. I said, well, I can't withdraw both. So I was ordered out of the House of Commons for the day. But the House was in uproar. You know, if there'd have been a vote, I would have stayed. Everybody enjoyed it. I once got thrown out as well because I said Norman Tebbit was lying in his pockets because he'd become a director of British Telecom, having privatised it. And everything was true. And she said, you'll have to withdraw. I said, I'm not withdrawing it, it's true. He says, well, that's it then, an early bath. And make...
Now, in American politics, often you'll see people clashing during debate, and they go behind the scenes and slap each other on the back.
Oh, that's what they do here.
They do that here?
Yeah, it makes me sick. I can't stand it. I mean, I don't believe in being part of this sloppy belly of consensus. It's not for me.
And how do you see it happen here? I mean,
Well, what happens is that they go drinking together, and some of them have a system called pairing. I believe that you should turn up for work to be paid. That's what happened in the pits. If I didn't go to work at the pits, I didn't get paid. And I believe that this system that they have here in this gentleman's club, this quaint little place, should be changed so that members of Parliament are full-time and they have to earn the keep.